She was a young mother, full of life, raising her baby in what seemed like a safe and quiet neighborhood. But behind the walls next door lived a predator with a past so dark it should have kept him locked away forever. What happened on that ordinary afternoon is one of the most horrifying and heartbreaking tragedies you will ever hear, and it will leave you questioning how such evil was allowed to walk free. This isn't just another true crime video. It's the most gripping and devastating story you'll watch all year. A new start in Hinton Mali Bush came into the world on February 13th, 1997, in the Canadian province of Alberta. She grew up in a warm, close-knit home with her parents and younger sister. A sister who adored her and looked up to her as both protector and role model. Malay was bright, energetic, and unfailingly kind, the sort of person others were drawn to instantly. She thrived in friendships and carried a joy for life that was hard to miss. One of her greatest passions was ice skating. From the time she was a little girl, her parents took her to the local rinks, and it quickly became more than a pastime. It was something she loved deeply. In high school, she met Cody. Their connection was instant, and before long, they were inseparable. By the time they graduated, both knew they wanted to build a life together. Malay took a job at a charity organization supporting people with disabilities, where her compassion found purpose. The work inspired her to take the next step, pursuing a career in healthcare. She enrolled in a local college, earned her nursing degree in 2017, and returned to the charity center to continue helping those in need. Then came news that would change everything. She was pregnant. Maylee and Cody were overjoyed. Cody proposed in the middle of an ice rink, the place that had always felt like her second home. In 2020, they welcomed their son, Noah, and began the next chapter, life as a family of 3. Cody's work in pipeline construction took him all over Canada, often for weeks at a time. The constant travel meant the young family either uprooted themselves to follow him or endured long stretches apart. But in 2021, everything shifted. Cody landed a new job that allowed him to stay in one place. That summer, the couple moved to Hinton, a small, remote town surrounded by nature. It was the first time they could truly settle, plant roots, and enjoy the simple rhythm of daily life together. In early September 2021, they moved into a modest apartment in a quiet residential complex on the edge of town. Malay was 24. Noah was just 16 months old. They were happy. They were home. For a moment, it seemed like their life was exactly where it was meant to be. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your support means a lot to us and helps us grow. A huge thank you to everyone who's been watching. The day they disappeared. On September 16th, Cody left for work as usual. Maylee stayed behind in their new apartment, caring for their 16-month-old son, Noah. His shift ended around 6 p.m., and he drove home expecting to spend a quiet evening with his family. But when he walked through the door, the apartment was empty. At first, he thought nothing of it. Maybe Maylee had taken Noah for a walk in one of the nearby parks, but a few things didn't add up. The stroller was still inside, and on the kitchen table sat plates with half-prepared food, as if she had started making lunch, then abruptly stopped. The unease in Cody's stomach deepened. He searched the surrounding parks and playgrounds, but found no trace of them. Back at the apartment, he began calling family and friends, hoping someone had picked them up. No one had seen Maylee that day. Calls to her phone went unanswered. The strangeness of the situation weighed on him. By the time a friend arrived to help, Cody decided it was time to call the police. Together, they scoured the area once more before officers arrived. Still nothing. The first lead police immediately began a thorough search of the apartment complex, the wooded area behind it, and the nearby streets. They went door to door, questioning residents. Before long, one neighbor recalled something curious. A woman matching Maylee's description had been seen earlier in the day, running toward the road. She wasn't calling for help, and Noah wasn't with her. Investigators requested access to the building's CCTV footage from the complex manager. They combed through hours of recordings, frame by frame. No sign of Maylee. But then, amid the footage, they spotted something completely unexpected. The break in the case. While combing through hours of surveillance footage, detectives suddenly froze on one frame. Around noon, the same neighbor who had claimed to see Maylee earlier was caught on camera leaving the building, carrying 2 large garbage bags. The sight sent a chill through the room. Officers moved fast. They headed straight to the dumpster behind the complex and began tearing open the bags. Inside one of them was a horror no one was prepared for. The lifeless body of 16-month-old Noah, wrapped alongside some of Maylee's personal belongings, including her phone. The tone of the investigation shifted instantly. This was no longer just a missing persons case. Now it was a double homicide, and their prime suspect was the man next door. The search next door. The suspect, 53-year-old Robert Major, lived directly beside Maylee and Cody's apartment. The walls they shared now took on a sinister meaning. But Cody, along with other family members, was still inside, just feet away. Detectives feared that discovering what lay beyond Robert's door could trigger a violent confrontation. To avoid that, police asked Cody and his relatives to temporarily step out, telling them they needed to thoroughly examine the apartment. What they didn't say was that his son's body had just been found in a dumpster mere yards away. Once Cody was gone, officers went straight to Robert's unit. He agreed to let them search. In the bathroom, the grim truth emerged. Lying in the bathtub, completely unclothed, was Maylee's body. The discovery ended the search, but opened the door to a far darker question. What had happened inside Robert Major's apartment that day? Moments later, he was taken into custody. The grim puzzle of that September afternoon now in the hands of investigators. The monster next door. As investigators waited for the medical examiner's report, they began digging into Robert Major's past, and what they uncovered was chilling. Robert's criminal record stretched back decades, with more than 24 charges to his name, the majority for sexual offenses. Despite the sheer number of accusations, his prison terms had been shockingly short. Over the years, Robert underwent multiple psychiatric evaluations while in custody. In those sessions, he made no effort to hide his depravity, openly admitting that he enjoyed committing these acts and took pleasure in the harm he caused. Experts repeatedly warned that he was highly likely to offend again, but the warnings were ignored. In 2016, Robert walked free. The only safeguard put in place was a public safety notice, alerting the community to his presence. He was added to a special offender registry and slapped with strict conditions. He could not live near women or children, schools, or playgrounds. He was forbidden from leaving his home city, nearly 190 miles from Hinton, and required to meet regularly with police. Those measures, however, came with a built-in flaw. Under Canadian law at the time, if an offender went 1 year without a new conviction, they were automatically removed from the registry, and all restrictions were lifted. Robert cleared the year and vanished off law enforcement's radar. At some point afterward, he relocated to Hinton, and moved into a family-oriented apartment complex teeming with children. Local police had no idea about his criminal past. The building's management, even if they had wanted to, had no access to such information. Nor did his unsuspecting neighbors. A quiet afternoon turns into horror. By the time medical examiners finished their work, Robert Major had already offered investigators a partial confession, and the details were enough to shake even the most hardened detectives. Alongside his own words, police gathered witness accounts and hard evidence that began to piece together the chain of events leading up to that unimaginable day. That morning, Mali and Noah took a walk to the nearby park. When they returned, the building manager approached Miley with a small complaint. Cody's muddy work boots were leaving tracks in the hallway. Miley, ever polite, promised she'd clean the mess immediately. She went back inside, laid Noah down for a nap, and started preparing lunch. While chatting on the phone with a friend, Miley heard a knock at the door. A man's voice, Robert's, offered to help clean the hallway. The friend didn't hear the rest, but moments later, Miley ended the call and sent a quick text to a family member around 2 p.m. From there, the timeline turns murky. Robert has never explained exactly how Miley crossed into his apartment. Police believe he may have lured her in, perhaps by continuing the hallway conversation, perhaps by asking for help with something inside. One way or another, she stepped through his door, and his confession began there. Almost immediately, he attacked her, attempting to strangle her. The struggle lasted nearly 10 minutes before he overpowered and killed her. Then he sexually assaulted her lifeless body. He dragged her to the bathroom, leaving her there, before slipping into her apartment to take Noah. Within minutes, the toddler was dead too. Robert stuffed Noah's body, along with Miley's clothing and personal belongings, into garbage bags and dumped them in a dumpster outside the building. Miley's body remained in his bathtub, as though he hadn't bothered to plan what to do next. Meanwhile, he tried to plant a false trail. By telling others he'd seen Miley leaving the complex, he may have hoped to delay suspicion and keep police from knocking on his door. A predator next door. When it came to Robert Major's motives, there were no simple answers. Investigators never released his full confession, only fragments, enough to fuel speculation, but not enough to paint the entire picture. The motive for killing Miley was tragically clear. He took pleasure in causing harm, and her murder was committed with the intent of sexual assault. Noah's death, however, was more baffling. Detectives theorized he may have killed the toddler to prevent identification, or perhaps Noah woke and began to cry, triggering Robert's fear that neighbors might hear. Whatever the case, psychiatrists agreed on one point. Robert's violence was driven by nothing more than the sadistic thrill of harming those weaker than himself, and his cruelty didn't end at the prison gates. During an earlier sentence, he attacked a cellmate, earning additional charges. Yet despite decades of predatory behavior and repeated psychiatric warnings, he was still released, and eventually vanished from police monitoring entirely. Canadians were horrified to learn the truth. Even if Robert had remained on the sex offender registry, the public would never have known. Unlike in the United States, Canada's registry is closed to ordinary citizens. The residents of Molly's building, including her family, who had moved in only 15 days earlier, had no idea a serial predator lived just steps away. The murders ignited public outrage and galvanized Miley's family. They began pushing for a new law, named in Noah's memory, that would keep repeat offenders under lifetime monitoring and create a public registry so families could know if a predator was living nearby. Robert, for his part, didn't bother denying his guilt in court. The trial moved quickly, But before sentencing, he delivered one last statement that stunned everyone in the room. He admitted he should remain behind bars forever because he feared what he might do if released. In the same breath, he insisted he still considered himself a good person. The court sentenced him to life in prison, with the possibility of parole in 25 years. If he survives that long, he will be 78. Even then, there's no certainty he wouldn't still pose a threat. As for Noah's Law, progress has been agonizingly slow. Years later, the bill still hasn't passed, and no one knows if it ever will. Share your thoughts on this story in the comment section. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.